Ladies and gentlemen, before they gave you freedom, they gave you a cage for your mind. Before they gave you identity, they gave you chains called education, entertainment, comfort, and control. They feared the day you would start thinking for yourself, because that day their empire begins to crumble. That day your destiny begins to rise. I did not come here to entertain you. I came to disturb your peace, to challenge your beliefs, to burn the lies you were raised on. Because what you're about to hear is not just a message, it is a mental revolution. When the youth begin to think differently, they begin to live differently. And when they begin to live differently, the world can never remain the same. They told you that you were free, but they forgot to tell you that before they gave you freedom, they programmed your mind. They didn't chain your hands, they trained your thoughts. And the tragedy is this: most people will live their whole lives thinking they are thinking, when in reality they are simply repeating. Repeating the fears, the rules, the lies, the patterns given to them by a system that never wanted them to rise. From the very beginning, your mind was not yours. From the classroom to the screen, from the headline to the algorithm, they planted thoughts in you before you could choose which ones to grow. You were told who to admire, who to fear, what to believe, how to live, and what success should look like. And every time you tried to think outside their frame, they called you dangerous. They said you were rebellious. They said you needed to get in line. But here's the truth: you were never supposed to fit in their line. You were born to break it, to redraw it, to build something new, but that can never happen until you recognize this one truth. Your thoughts are not truly yours until you reclaim them. They taught you to obey before you could ask why. They taught you to memorize before you could question. You were raised on instruction, not introspection. You were told to follow, not to think. And the reason they fear your thinking is because the moment your thoughts become independent, your life does too. When you start to think for yourself, you stop begging for permission. You stop accepting your limits. You stop living by borrowed definitions of success. You stop waiting for the world to validate your worth. From childhood, you were placed in a system not designed to awaken your genius, but to control your energy. You were never taught who you are. You were taught what they needed you to be, because a man who knows who he is cannot be enslaved. A youth who knows their power cannot be manipulated. So they gave you information, but not truth. They gave you distractions, but not direction. And now you live in a world full of noise, but empty of clarity. Everything you think, you must now examine. Everything you believe, you must now question. Because until you separate what was programmed from what is authentic, you will continue to live a life that is not truly yours. You will keep chasing goals that don't fulfill you. You will keep pleasing people who don't value you. You will keep trying to prove yourself to a world that benefits from your silence. That is why this generation must wake up. Not just emotionally, not just spiritually, but mentally. Because the battle is not just in the streets, it is in the mind. And the mind, once awakened, is the most powerful weapon against any form of oppression. They want you to feel free as long as you don't think freely. They want you to express yourself as long as that expression stays within their limits. But true freedom begins the moment you realize that your thinking has been colonized. This is not about rebellion. This is about restoration. You must take back your mind from the forces that have occupied it. Every time you consume something without thinking, you surrender your mind. Every time you believe something just because it is popular, you lose your identity. And if you lose your identity, they will sell you a new one that serves them, not you. But what if this generation decides to think again? What if the youth stop scrolling and start studying? What if they stop repeating and start reflecting? What if they start questioning every headline, every system, every voice that ever told them to shrink? Then you will see a shift. Then you will see power return to the people, because the most dangerous human being is not the one with wealth or weapons. It is the one whose mind cannot be owned. You must unlearn what they gave you. You must detox your thoughts. You must begin the painful but powerful process of mental liberation. And yes, it will hurt. Yes, it will make you uncomfortable. Yes, it will make you feel lost at times. But that's what healing feels like. That's what waking up looks like. You cannot reclaim your life until you first reclaim your mind. You do not see the world as it is, you see the world as you've been taught to see it. Your eyes may be open, but if your mind is blind, you are still living in darkness. What they showed you was not truth, it was a version of reality crafted to keep you loyal to a lie. And that lie is this, that what you see is all there is, and that how you see it is how it will always be. But let me tell you, perception is not reality, perception is control, and those who control how you see the world can control how you live in it. You were trained from birth to look through their lens. A lens of fear, a lens of limitation, a lens of submission. They told you what beauty looks like, what success sounds like, what power feels like. They told you what to chase and what to run from. And so now you fear failure more than regret. You fear standing out more than staying lost. You fear thinking for yourself more than being liked by others. But all of this is programming. And until you change the lens, you will continue to walk in circles, calling it progress. You look at yourself and see lack because they taught you to compare. You look at your brother and see competition because they taught you to divide. You look at your land and see poverty because they never taught you how to build. You look at your culture and see shame because they trained you to admire what enslaved you. The problem is not what you have. The problem is what you've been taught to value. And until that changes, even your blessings will feel like burdens. When a man is taught to hate himself, he will sabotage every opportunity. When a generation is taught to admire its enemy, it will destroy its own future. You cannot rise above a world you are afraid to question. You cannot evolve if your thinking is locked inside someone else's definitions. They created your mental walls, and now you live inside their boundaries, calling it reality. But this is not reality, this is a prison of perception. And a prison does not need chains when the prisoner believes the walls are permanent. You have been taught to look at wealth through the eyes of consumption, not creation. You have been taught to see leadership as popularity, not responsibility. You have been taught to see rebellion as strength, but silence as wisdom. Everything has been flipped. Everything has been inverted. The youth are being raised not to think but to react, not to create but to consume. Not to question but to conform, and then we wonder why they are lost. They are not lost, they are misled. What you believe shapes how you behave. If you believe you are small, you will never attempt greatness. If you believe you are late, you will never start. If you believe you are less, you will never lead. So the battle is not in your hands, it is in your mind. And until you change what you believe, you will keep repeating the same cycles in different seasons, calling it fate. But this is not fate, this is programming, and programming must be broken before destiny can be fulfilled. So how do you break it? You question everything. You unlearn before you relearn. You stop accepting what is popular and start pursuing what is true. You silence the noise and listen to the voice that has been whispering inside you since the day you were born, that voice that tells you there is more. That voice that tells you the world is not what it seems. That voice that tells you the lens they gave you is cracked and the truth is waiting just beyond it. Look again. Look at yourself and see power. Look at your people and see unity. Look at your future and see possibilities. You do not have to see through their eyes anymore. You can choose a new vision, one that is not based on fear but on purpose. One that is not shaped by media but by mission. One that is not limited by their past but launched by your potential. The moment you change how you see, everything around you begins to shift, not because the world changed but because you finally did. So I challenge you, clean your lens, question your thoughts, rebuild your belief. Because until you do, they will continue to control you, not with force, but with the illusion that you are free. Once you see differently, you live differently. And once you live differently, you become the proof that the system was never the truth. Comfort is the most dangerous addiction of our time. It is silent, seductive, and deadly. You do not see it coming because it doesn't scream, it whispers. It doesn't hit you like a storm, it surrounds you like warm air. And while you are laughing, scrolling, indulging, and relaxing, it is stealing from you quietly. It is killing your urgency, your ambition, your discipline. It is robbing you of the fire you were born with. It is making you satisfied with a life that doesn't even touch the surface of your potential. Comfort is the assassin of greatness, and it has crept into the soul of this generation. The world has mastered the art of numbing you. It gives you more comfort than any generation before you. It gives you fast food, fast money, fast entertainment, fast fame. It tells you that life is about ease, not excellence. And you believe it, because comfort feels good, but what feels good is not always good. And if you don't wake up, you will trade your calling for comfort and never even realize it until it's too late. Because comfort doesn't just delay your purpose, it deletes it slowly, piece by piece. The system has figured out that if they can keep you entertained, they don't have to enslave you. If they can keep you distracted, they don't have to control you. If they can keep you dependent on comfort, they don't need to silence you. You'll silence yourself. Comfort is the modern form of mental slavery. It doesn't use chains. It uses choice. It doesn't need violence. It uses convenience. You are not in bondage because someone is holding you down. You are in bondage because you've stopped pushing yourself up. The youth today are not powerless. They are simply too comfortable to sacrifice, too comfortable to wake up early, too comfortable to read, too comfortable to reflect, too comfortable to endure discomfort for the sake of legacy. They want impact, but not the discipline. They want glory, but not the grind. They want purpose, but not the pain. But let me tell you something hard and honest. Greatness only begins when comfort ends. The moment you say no to what is easy and yes to what is necessary, that is the moment you start rising. Your future does not belong to how you feel, it belongs to what you choose. And if you keep choosing comfort, you will live the same year 100 times and call it a life. Your days will pass, your potential will fade, and your dreams will die in the prison of what was convenient. But the ones who change the world are the ones who chose pain now for power later. They understood that growth demands discomfort, that success requires sacrifice, that purpose is born through pressure. Every great leader you admire was once uncomfortable. Every breakthrough began with a breakdown. Every revolution started with a refusal to settle. You cannot rise while sitting. You cannot build while sleeping. You cannot lead while lounging. You must get up. You must get hungry. You must get serious, because time is not waiting for you, and purpose does not chase comfort. It chases courage. Look around. Your generation is dying not from poverty, but from pleasure. Not from oppression, but from obsession with comfort. They are not chained by systems, they are chained by screens. They are not limited by enemies, they are limited by ease. But you still have a choice. You can choose to be uncomfortable. You can choose to wake up before the world does. You can choose to study when others sleep. You can choose to suffer in silence while you build what no one believes in yet. Because one day, the same people who questioned your struggle will witness your rise. The fire you carry cannot survive in comfort. It needs resistance, it needs challenge, it needs pressure. If you want the flame to burn brighter, stop giving it shelter. Let it face the wind, let it face the storm, let it face rejection, failure, isolation. Because that is where the real you is born. That is where purpose becomes unstoppable. You were not created for a soft life. You were created for a sharp one. You were not built to float. You were built to fight. The most powerful person is not the one with the biggest platform, not the one with the loudest voice, not the one with 1 million followers echoing their name. The most powerful person is the one who thinks for themselves. Because in a world where minds are programmed and opinions are outsourced, independent thinking is a revolutionary act. It is a declaration of war against mental slavery. When you start thinking for yourself, you stop being a puppet and you start becoming a force. The crowd can shout, the media can scream, the system can seduce, but the one who can think critically, deeply, and freely cannot be moved, cannot be bought, and cannot be broken. Look around you. Most people do not think. They react, they copy, they consume, they conform, they wake up, scroll, repeat. Their thoughts are not birthed. They are borrowed. They say what they are told to say. They believe what they are told to believe. They live how they are told to live. They walk through life wearing mental uniforms stitched by systems that have trained them not to question. But the one who thinks for themselves begins to see through the noise. They begin to understand that the world does not change through noise, it changes through thought. Real, raw, courageous thought. A thinking person is dangerous to every system built on deception, because once you start thinking, you start seeing. You start seeing the lies sold as truth. You start seeing the manipulation in education, in politics, in culture. You start realizing that so much of what we are told is not to inform us, but to mold us. And once you realize that, you no longer give blind loyalty. You no longer accept silence as peace. You no longer settle for existing. You demand to live. Thinking for yourself is not arrogance. It is responsibility. It means you take ownership of your mind. You do not let trends define you. You do not let fear direct you. You do not let popularity shape your identity. You sit with your thoughts, you analyze, you discern, and you choose what aligns with your purpose, not what pleases the masses. And that is power, because when you choose your thoughts intentionally, you choose your future deliberately. Every great leader, every innovator, every world changer had one thing in common. They dared to think differently. The system is not afraid of noise. It is afraid of thought. Noise can be ignored. Thought cannot. Noise can be drowned. Thought multiplies. That is why they flood your day with distraction. That is why they entertain you constantly. That is why they sell you pleasure endlessly. Because if you ever paused long enough to think, you would wake up. And once you wake up, you cannot go back to sleep. Once your eyes have seen truth, they cannot be closed by comfort. Once your mind has tasted freedom, it will never settle for illusion. You were not born to agree with everything. You were born to question, to challenge, to break mental cycles passed down through fear and silence. And yes, thinking for yourself will cost you. It may cost you friends. It may cost you approval. It may cost you comfort. But what you gain is priceless. Clarity, identity, direction, and strength. Because a man who thinks for himself walks with purpose even when no one walks with him. A woman who thinks for herself speaks with power even when the world tries to silence her. Independent thought is not about being different for the sake of attention. It is about being true to what is right even when it's not popular. It is about holding on to values when others chase validation. It is about seeing past surface narratives and digging for deeper truth. And when you walk with that kind of clarity, you become unshakable. You no longer follow the waves, you command them. You no longer echo the crowd, you lead it. You no longer chase influence, you become it. The greatest threat to oppression is not protest, it is independent thought. Because a thinking mind cannot be colonized, a thinking mind cannot be bought with fame, with money, with temporary applause. A thinking mind is the seed of revolutions, the root of freedom, the fire that burns down false systems and awakens new nations. And that fire, that seed, that strength is inside of you, not in your popularity, but in your mind, not in your appearance, but in your perception, not in your connections, but in your conviction.